For as long as McDonald's McRib has existed, people have been joking about it being mystery meat. It's this cult classic barbecue sandwich that some people go insane for, and yet no one really knows exactly what it is. Well, recently, McDonald's was sued, with the people complaining that the sandwich was not rib at all, but instead heart, tripe, and stomach. Now, McDonald's fully denies this, but it made me wonder, okay, well, what is McRib meat really then? So I looked into it, and the answer was actually 10 times more interesting than I thought it would be. And it really opened my eyes to not just the McRib, but the insane technology that goes into many meat products at the grocery store without us even realizing it. So today's video is kind of a how it's made McRib edition. Also, despite my audience being like 70% female, this video accidentally covers a lot of niche male interests. This is probably the most accidentally for the boys video I've ever made. We have ribs in general, the Meat Hall of Fame, army stuff, and MREs.
Looking pretty juicy.
Also, I've been more active on Instagram lately, so you can finally follow me there at Kiana Docherty.
We're on our way to McDonald's. It's the farewell tour of the McRib. Oh, and look, a big sign says McRib. This could be your last bite. Get it?
So the McRib is McDonald's barbecue-themed pork sandwich that they bring out once a year. It's got a bun, a pork patty, pickles and onions, and it's literally shaped like a creepy little rack of ribs, complete with bone sockets. And apparently America loves it. I say apparently because I watched a lot of videos of people eating this sandwich to make this video, and the response was surprisingly meh.
McDonald's just brought back the McRib.
The McRib is back at McDonald's. Again.
McRib is a top 2 sandwich at McDonald's.
And you know my fat ass had to get 2.
What is this meat? What is in this meat?
Let's give it a try. So, it's not terrible.
Ah, the most processed of all meats. Oh my goodness.
I do not care what this is made of.
It gives me strong, like, school lunch vibes just because of the type of meat in the patty. It's definitely not some sort of, like, baby back rib. Definitely a meat conglomeration. I mean, it is McDonald's, it is the McRib.
The meat, I mean, very processed, very questionable. Where did it come from? We don't know. But we don't ask questions, okay? I mean, I like it. I give it like a 6.5.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine.
All I ever hear about this sandwich is that people are feral for it, and then I watch all those videos and I'm like, is this all marketing hype? Like, what's going on here? But of course, there were some exceptions to this. People who go the complete opposite direction. People who love the McRib so much that they're sometimes called the cult of McRib.
The man, the myth, the legend, the McRib.
I am the McRib's biggest fan.
I actually booked a flight to Arizona just to get a McRib.
McRib is back. My first McRib of 2018.
I miss this sandwich so much.
Why can't I get McRib? It is not building customer loyalty. It is not building goodwill with your biggest fans to deny people the McRib. You need us.
Every McDonald's restaurant must sell McRib.
Yeah, so there is a very dedicated group of McRib lovers, to the point that The Simpsons even did a parody of the Rib Witch, where Homer sees a commercial for the Rib Witch on TV.
Like a rib, it tastes like liberty.
We start with authentic, letter-graded meat and process the hell out of it.
I don't mind the taste.
He tastes it for the first time, becomes obsessed, and then starts neglecting his family in order to travel around with the rib heads to eat the Rib Witch. And apparently that's not a joke. Like, that's a thing that people actually do. That's why I was kind of surprised when the overwhelming response was meh, because there are people who are literally driving around the country for this sandwich, which they can do because this guy right here built them a website to track the McRib. Since I guess often it's not rolled out nationwide, it just kind of pops up wherever it wants across the US.
If you spot a McRib, go to the website and you can give the information to you, right? And you'll just...
Well, you enter the location where you saw it at,
We'll put it on the map, and we try to call those locations to say, hey, do you really have it?
You're doing God's work, man. Doing God's work.
But anyway, yeah, there are a lot of people super into this sandwich, which is, I guess, why some people are suing them now.
McDonald's is facing a lawsuit, this one involving its fan favorite McRib.
Just before Christmas, a group of consumers, Peter Lee, Charles Lynch, Dorian Baker, and Derek Wilson, filed a proposed federal class action lawsuit against McDonald's in Chicago, arguing that the fast food giant misled customers by selling a sandwich called the McRib that contains no rib meat at all. At the center of the complaint is the McRib's carefully engineered ambiguity. The sandwich is boneless, molded into the shape of a rack of ribs, drenched in barbecue sauce, and marketed as a limited time event. The plaintiffs are arguing that the combination would lead a reasonable consumer to believe the product contains at least some actual pork rib meat. Now, my first thought on this was, who thought that this was rib meat? I've never eaten one, but I've seen them around, and I always thought that the whole thing was like rib vibes, like rib inspired, but I didn't think that they were promising that it was ribs. And I thought we kind of all knew that, and that was common knowledge, and that's why there were so many jokes about the mystery meat thing. I mean, one of the 10 total comments on the YouTube video about the lawsuit was literally this: I would be surprised if it's even meat. Now, thankfully, there is a Reddit post that asks this exact question. Did anyone really think the McRib sandwich was ribs? There is a class action lawsuit stating that the McRib is not ribs. I'm just amazed that anyone thought it really was ribs. And the answer actually really surprised me because it was pretty much split exactly down the middle. I kind of assumed that the rib in McRib did stand for rib. I thought it was highly processed rib meat, but still rib meat. Well, yeah, if it's called rib, it should be made of rib meat. What's next? There's no real shamrocks in the shamrock shake? If I find out there's no nugs in McNuggets, I'm definitely gonna sue. I think a lot of people do. I've never had one, so I just assumed it was processed rib meat. I definitely thought this. I thought it was basically a rib meat chicken nugget slathered in sauce. I never thought it was only rib meat, but I assumed there were some waste bits of rib in there. Do people have nothing better to do or have no shame? Who really, really thought the McRib was meat from ribs? It's ribbed for our pleasure. That's it. So yeah, nobody thought it was quality meat, but a lot of people did think that there was rib meat in there, which I feel like I have to say, I feel like this lawsuit is probably going absolutely nowhere. It is going to crash and burn so fast. I've seen way stronger lawsuits about food fall flat on their face, and I really think this one is definitely going nowhere. But it definitely led me to wonder, well, what is it? What is in the McRib meat exactly? I want to know. And how the heck do they actually get it to be shaped like that? And I know I already mentioned this in the intro, but the answer was 10 times more interesting than I thought it would be. The McRib story has no business being this interesting. But here's what the lawsuit says. According to the complaint, the McRib is actually made from restructured pork, which combines cuts such as shoulder, heart, tripe, and scalded stomach, none of which qualify as rib meat. A McDonald's spokesperson told The Independent that the McRib uses 100% boneless pork with barbecue sauce, onions, and pickles, and that no hearts, tripe, or scalded stomach are included. Okay, so on one hand, McDonald's is outright saying there is none of these three things in here. On the other hand, all they said was it was 100% pork, so the floor is pretty open for it to be literally any other part of the animal. Now, if we look to the McDonald's website here, we can see that the McRib pork patty contains pork, water, salt, dextrose, and rosemary extract. So the ingredients really don't tell us much at all about the meat. And actually, at face value, it kind of seems like the patty is a lot simpler than even the sauce or the bun. So I start looking into it further, and I quickly discovered this old Vice article titled, "How U.S. Army Technology Gave Rise to the McRib." Most of the story I'm about to tell you is adapted from this article. The year was 1977, and McDonald's suddenly found themselves needing to switch up their menu. The US federal government had just given the recommendation that people should stop eating so much red meat, and instead they should start consuming more poultry and more fish in order to avoid heart disease. Now, this is obviously not great news for a company that makes most of its money selling hamburgers. And when the government makes a recommendation, it might not seem like it, but people actually do change their behavior. If they hear this kind of thing, they will stop eating so much red meat. So something like this can really, really hurt McDonald's, and they recognized that they needed to pivot, and they needed to pivot fast. So McDonald's planned to expand into other meats. First on their list was chicken, but McDonald's couldn't just start selling fried chicken because KFC and even Popeyes were already dominating that. Second idea, pork, except the main type of pork that most Americans loved was barbecue pork. And barbecue pork just doesn't really work that well with McDonald's system. You know, their super efficient fast food system that has really made them into the extremely successful company they are today. So McDonald's knew that if they wanted to keep dominating the fast food scene, because by the 70s they were already in their heyday, they knew that if they wanted to keep doing this, they'd have to figure out a new way forward. And lucky for them, at the same time, the army was literally working on technology that would become their solution. Around the same time, in the 60s to mid 70s, the US Army was trying to find a way to feed its soldiers more meat in a cheaper and easier way than they currently were. But not just any meat, not steak, not chicken breast, not ribs. The army really wanted to lower its food bill, so instead it was looking at using something called trimmings, aka the pieces of meat left over when you butcher a piece of meat. You know, when you like cut meat down and there's a little piece right here? That's what we're talking about. The parts stuck to the fat, stuck to the bones, the extra skin, the gristly parts, but also bigger cuts of meat that people don't like to buy as often. Things like hearts, lungs, brains, eyeballs, scalded stomach. All of this stuff is super, super cheap, but it's still meat. It has protein and nutrition, though it's typically a lot fattier than the cuts we normally buy. The only real issue with it is when you try to put all these different meat flakes together, you end up with a gross pile of different bits that nobody really wants to eat. And the army really needs soldiers to eat. So the army had to figure out how to turn these trimmings into something that's not only edible, but ideally delicious. And it took them like 10 years, but they did it. And here is a description of the full process of what is now called restructured meat. Restructured meat products are commonly manufactured by using lower valued meat trimmings reduced in size by comminution, flaking, chunking, grinding, chopping, or slicing. The comminuted mixture is mixed with salt and water to extract salt-soluble proteins. These extracted proteins are critical to produce a glue, which binds muscle pieces together. These muscle pieces may then be reformed to produce a meat log of specific form or shape. The log is then cut into steaks or chops, which when cooked are similar in appearance and texture to their intact muscle counterparts. So I tried to find videos of this process online, but so far I haven't found any. I'll put some in if I do. But this whole meat glue thing really intrigued me, so I kept looking into it, and there now today exists a product called meat glue that performs the same function as in what I just described. Here's actually an insane video of someone using bigger cuts of beef than what is used in restructured meat, but you can see they put it all together and it actually becomes a crazy meat log. Look at that, literally insane. Now in that video, they were using really big pieces of meat, but what the army was using was tiny flakes of meat, almost like a meat mush, right? Like we're talking about tons and tons of different little tiny pieces needing to come together into one homogenized meat that can then be literally glued together and shaped into whatever you want. Pork chop, rack of ribs, steak, dinosaur. So the army took this technology, and this new kind of meat then became the new staple in their new series of MREs, or meals ready to eat.
Here's the loaf. It's a steamer.
This guy's whole channel is him opening up and eating MREs from like 40 years ago. And funnily enough, he has a 2016 MRE that has none other than a McRib looking riblet, or whatever you want to call it. Looks exactly like a McRib.
Looking pretty juicy.
Complete with barbecue sauce and everything. So the US Army invents this technology in order to feed their troops. How does this then get to McDonald's and lead to the invention of the McRib? Well, it's all thanks to an Army Center contractor and meat scientist named Roger Mandigo, a man who would later be inducted into the Meat Industry Hall of Fame with only 11 other people, 3 of which are Colonel Sanders from KFC, Dave Thomas of Wendy's, and Ray Kroc of McDonald's. So pretty major list, and Roger made this list thanks to this whole restructured meat and McDonald's thing. Now, it was a little bit confusing, but as far as I could tell from what I read online, Roger Mandigo was the main scientist working on restructured meat with the Army. And as he's doing this, he gets approached by the National Pork Producers Council in order to help them sell more pork. Also, if you're American or millennial or older, you may remember ads that said pork, the other white meat.
We gave this man one bite of a new kind of steak, America's Cut. If America's Cut can pass this taste test, he'll pass yours. Pork, the other white meat.
That was created by the National Pork Council. So yeah, pork industry contacts Mandigo and says, we love this restructured meat thing. Let's get restructured pork on the menu somewhere. But not just anywhere. The National Pork Council specifically wanted to target McDonald's. Probably because by that time in history, McDonald's was already smashing. This is like peak McDonald's under Ray Kroc. It had like 6,000 locations, and it was really the company to put fast food on the map. So you can really see why the pork industry was like, I want that one. Now, on the McDonald's side, as we already talked about, they're dealing with this issue of the government saying, eat less red meat. So they are really open to having these guys approach them and say, look what we have for you. It's perfect timing. Mandigo pitches the restructured pork to McDonald's, and they're like, yes, we want this. There is only one problem. The problem was McDonald's knew that something like this would be controversial. A restructured pork patty, especially back then, that's a tough sell. I mean, it's a tough sell today. McDonald's had controversy every time they tried to make a change. Recently, they had changed their potatoes over to frozen. They changed them over because they actually found a way of making it better that way. Same with their beef. They ended up switching it over to frozen because they found a better way of standardizing it and making sure every single patty was equally good. But customers were unhappy with learning of those changes. So they knew that this whole restructured pork thing was going to be a little bit iffy. Knowing this, they hire this fancy European chef, a man named René Arend. He comes on to help them perfect this new idea of this pork patty that would later become the McRib, and he actually works on the McNugget as well. But his position there was to do two things, not just help with the formula, but also make these foods more acceptable. René Arend was a European chef, which was automatically considered a little bit fancy. He cooked for the Queen of England and other stars and celebrities, and overall he just felt classy. And I think that McDonald's knew that people would ask less questions of this very oddly shaped, unique meat if it had a man like René Arend behind it. So René Arend, he tweaks the seasonings, he tweaks the sauces, and actually that shape was his idea. Roger Mandigo had actually pitched McDonald's the McChop, a patty shaped like a pork chop, but René Arend was like, no, we are gonna make it shaped like a rib, and we're going to season it like Southern barbecue. And voila, with that, in 1981, the McRib was born. So in conclusion, the McRib 100% is this restructured meat thing that's been named in this lawsuit. They were right. Though I did read from Roger Mandigo himself back in the 80s that at least originally, the McDonald's McRib was actually made of pork shoulder. It was restructured, but it was made of pork shoulder to begin with. So it was just a cut of shoulder, flaked down and shaped into a rack of ribs. But is that true today? The answer is I have no idea, and there is absolutely no way to tell by looking at the back of the ingredients. But the fact that McDonald's was like, yeah, there's no tripe or stomach or inter alia or whatever in here, it's 100% pork. That makes me think that it's probably not pork shoulder, because why wouldn't you just say, hey, it's pork shoulder? But there's no way to confirm. So the McRib really is still mystery meat, kind of like The Simpsons said.
The animal we made him from is now extinct.
The pig? The cow?
You're way off. Think smaller. Think more legs.
To clarify though, the McRib is definitely pork. You could say it's 100% pork, but it could legally be every and any part of a pig. The law when it comes to labeling actually does not require McDonald's to tell us anything other than the fact that it's pig. The labeling laws do not require McDonald's to tell us anything else about the product. Now, I personally don't see anything wrong with companies using up less valuable pieces of meat. I'm happy they do that. I'm sure that contributes to less loss of product and less loss of animals because of it. However, it is a bit deceptive, and we don't quite know how far it goes. Like, I don't think many people realize that when you're buying a McRib, you're actually buying a bunch of little flakes of meat that have been scrapped together with probably some meat glue. Researching this video really opened my eyes to this whole world of restructured meat that I had never thought of before, but that's been plainly right there the entire time. Lunch meat, for example, in many instances is restructured meat. Imitation crab is restructured meat. It's actually pieces of fish glued together. Chicken nuggets, restructured meat. Definitely that meat in Campbell's chicken soup. And I do not have any proof about these, but I just personally think that these are restructured meat. That's what I'm thinking. Then you turn to the fast food options. How do you know which ones are restructured meat and which aren't? And there are definitely a lot more items in the grocery store that are restructured meat, but some of them are pretty convincing and there's no like master list for me to check. Companies don't have to tell you if the product that you're buying is restructured meat or if it's a whole cut of muscle the way it appears, which is just kind of crazy. And it really, really opens your eyes to the levels of processing even something like meat can go through. And I won't go too deep into it because this is a topic that could be so big that it could be its own video. But at the most extreme level, you are talking about meat products that are essentially a meat slurry. Like, we're going beyond flakes. I read a paper talking about manufacturers being able to now choose the particle size of the meat in the restructured meat products they're making. So teeny tiny meat particles from all different areas of the animal and coming together via glue to make a new piece of meat. But then the product that you buy is just labeled pork. It's just labeled chicken. That's it. What the heck? And again, I won't get too deep into it. I already did way too much research for this that there was no space for in this video. But if you want, I could do a video specifically on ultra processed meat. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one.